Welcome to Portland, Oregon, a city that previously boasted a vibrant economy, flourishing local businesses, and a unique culture. Fast forward to 2020, and Measure 110 is passed, hard drug possession is decriminalized, and the streets start to degrade. We're here in the city of Portland to go speak to locals and the homeless on the streets to find out just how bad this crisis has gotten. Let's go find out.
I've seen people laid off. I've seen people because of addiction, people making the wrong decisions. I mean, when we get out here on the streets, a lot of us tend to get into addiction. And I just got over, I'm 5 months clean. Yeah, and it's hard out here. I mean, living in a tent, it's not the life. And we got to deal with the sweeps. I mean, we live in a tent on a sidewalk or sometimes under a bridge or by a water or wherever it's at. But that's all we got. And for them to do the sweeps like that, it makes it impossible at times.
So speaking of addiction, I do know that, hard drugs were decriminalized here in the state of Oregon back in 2020. What have you seen on the streets as a direct result of that?
Oh, it's bad. I mean, anybody that does the blues and the fetties, it's everywhere. You can't walk downtown and not walk through a cloud of people blowing the stuff out, and they have no respect for nobody. The businesses have issues with them. We already have the issues we have with society because the way we are when we leave our camp somewhere, or instead of being the right one to clean up like you're supposed to, keep your area clean, we won't have issues, but they can't do that. They have no respect. The streets have no respect.
When I was here last, I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago, it was a little bit warmer, I actually watched an overdose in the middle of downtown. Is this something that's happening a lot here in Portland?
Yes, I see it a lot. Me and my dad, we said this one dude, he was in the doorway outside my dad's tent, and his friend had to do CPR on him for like 8 minutes, and then we got Narcan for him at the last minute, and he came back to life, and we were like, bro, you were gone. He said, I don't remember nothing. Anywhere you go, you got somebody yelling, hey, has anybody got Narcan? Anybody got Narcan? It's definitely something you want to have on you if you want to help somebody, because anybody can walk right by it.
I'm not from here. Talk to me about the streets of Portland. Are they safe?
No, not no more. They just want to shoot and stab, and it's crazy down here. Violence and addiction is bad.
Let's talk about drugs on the streets of Portland. On Friday, Mayor Ted Wheeler released a plan to criminalize open-air drug use in the Rose City. Well, turns out no enforcement needed because the mayor has backed off, and no such ordinance now is going to be introduced to the city council tomorrow. Yes, you did hear that right. It was going to happen, but now it's not.
Well, my name is Kevin Dahlgren. I'm a homelessness consultant. I've worked in Portland, Oregon over the last 28 years in homeless type services. And it's been in the last couple years I've realized that I've been working inside something I call the homeless industrial complex. I'm also known as a disruptor of that complex because what we tried isn't working, and I've been very vocal about making change at the system level to find a way to end this crisis. Homelessness has grown to a completely unmanageable level. I started doing outreach in the early 90s when most of the homeless were in Old Town, Portland, Oregon, but now it's basically on every block, every neighborhood in Portland Metro, and it's completely changed our city. Portland, Oregon, really, I thought was one of the greatest cities on earth in the 90s, and I don't know what's become of it. And so our system really over the last several years has become very radicalized, and they've really allowed this homelessness problem to grow. And I say this because every year budgets grow. And so if that's the case, money isn't the solution. We went from a multi-million-dollar industry to a multi-billion-dollar industry, yet the crisis is worse than ever. So maybe we need to start thinking differently about how to solve this and accept the fact that if money were the solution, we would have solved it by now. I have interviewed hundreds of homeless the last several years, and of the hundreds, a good 40% have told me they have come to this stage because they thought of it as a sanctuary city. Say we've come into Oregon because we heard their services and we need help because we're not getting elsewhere. There's that group. But I've also talked to others that said we come here because it's easier to commit crimes. And of course, when I say this, everyone's gonna say, how dare you, Kevin? I'm like, look, I'm not talking about everybody, but even a small percent can completely and fundamentally change an entire community. Well, Measure 110 did not help. That's the decriminalization of drugs, and that kind of made things 10 times worse. I don't think we ever could have predicted how bad fentanyl has got, because Measure 110 basically passed right as the fentanyl epidemic really blew up. And so what we have now is this perfect storm of, we have virtually, over 80% of every homeless person on the streets of Portland, Oregon has a history of addiction, and virtually everybody has switched to using fentanyl, which is highly addictive. So we have a highly addictive drug on the streets that's creating this really desperation to get to the next fix. And so that desperation is why we've seen this significant increase in crime. So I wouldn't say people are necessarily thriving, they're surviving, but they come here because they think, I'm not ready to break my cycle of addiction, I don't really want help. I might come to these communities because it's simply going to be easier to live the way I want to live.
The motto here of Keep Portland Weird has been wiped away by this city's reputation for violent political unrest, homelessness, and crime. And these days, many Portlanders seem adjusted to that.
For people who don't live here in Portland, what is it like living in the city?
Well, it's unpredictable, and you never really know what you're going to encounter when you leave the house. So I, as a parent, I have worries about when I bring my kids out and what we're gonna see, so I tend to avoid taking my little kids downtown. You're pretty much likely to see somebody ranting, screaming, stripping their clothes off, shooting up, smoking fentanyl, or people just kind of like laying on the ground and you don't know if they're alive or dead, but nobody really wants to check anymore because there's so many of them, and it's not just downtown. It's all over the place.
You've been here in Portland for a while. Has the city always looked like this?
No, definitely not. Even in 2018, it was nothing like this, where there's encampments on all the sidewalks and people just splayed out. I mean, no.
What have you experienced as a homeowner here in Portland?
Everyone's paranoid. If you have to park on the street, there's a pretty good chance that your car is going to disappear, or at least some parts of your car will disappear. People have crazy people banging on their doors and demanding to come into the house, or just showing up inside the house and sleeping in their beds. We've had like axe-wielding people roaming around our neighborhood screaming, that kind of thing, or barefoot women with their pants falling down, pushing an office chair through the middle of the street. And if you call the police, they don't really come, so. I wish all the time that we could just pick up and leave easily. I don't like sending my older kids on walks on their own, but I want them to have freedom. So I still let them go to the park, and my heart beats fast. I don't like taking my little kids out to witness the drug abuse and people jerking off in the streets. And it just fills me with anger. I just feel angry. I don't think my kids will ever want to do drugs. I'll say that, because they've seen what happens.
Drug use, garbage, rats, and violence became an all-too-common sight outside the homes in this neighborhood off Southeast 80th and Rhine.
At 8 o'clock in the morning, there's folks that are, smoking meth, they're shooting up, there's domestic violence, and it's absolutely absurd.
Last week, the city received 3,140 new campsite reports. 1,180 of them were along Southeast Powell Boulevard. They cleaned 14 and removed 64.
In terms of drugs, what are you seeing on the streets?
It's definitely gotten a lot worse. The decriminalization was cute when it first started, but they kind of created their own problem. Okay, we're going to decriminalize it. What's going to stop them from sitting on the corner and smoking fentanyl or doing whatever they're doing? It's not going to stop nobody, and it doesn't make it. It's made real easy to get your stomach fed, and all your money can go to drugs.
It hasn't always been like this. I think, half the people that are homeless, I think they choose to be homeless because of the fentanyl epidemic. They can't stay clean long enough to get into housing. The fentanyl is just taking over. Probably 95% of the homeless people are doing blues and fentanyl. It's so cheap is a problem. For $3, they can get high for a couple hours, and it used to be a lot more expensive than that. Constantly, I've seen people Narcaned out here, but Narcan's everywhere. So a lot of people are lucky that there is Narcan out here. But I personally have gotten 3 friends that aren't here anymore, in the last 6 years.
Because of drug addiction or?
Because of drug addiction, of overdosing.
Fentanyl is up about 700% as far as usage, and that's nationwide. Those are real numbers. So fentanyl is mixed with everything right now. So there's a new world of recovery.
What have you seen as a counselor here on the streets or even in the clinic with some of the people you worked with?
Well, I see high tolerances, like patients, the usage rate is from 1 to 10 pills as they're using it. So like fentanyl, and it's very inexpensive. It's like maybe $1 or $2 a pill. So even the homeless community are finding ways to have it more. So
walk around downtown Portland and you'll see people heating up foil with a lighter. They have powdered opioid, usually fentanyl, and then they inhale the smoke with a straw. And you don't just see this, you smell it. A burnt plastic odor as you walk by. This is an epidemic.
I've taken this personally because we are allowing people to languish and die on the streets every day. We have spent hundreds of millions of dollars to supposedly end this crisis, yet every year it gets worse. That is why I've taken it personally. There's a lot of good people on the streets of Portland, Oregon who desperately want help and aren't getting it. And that's why I've been so vocal, is we have to think differently with our approach. And when I say think differently, actually have an approach, because right now we don't have one. We have virtually no outreach teams out there actually out there to build trust and bring back hope with the homeless. You have to go to them. They're not going to come to you for a variety of reasons. A, they don't trust you, and B, if they leave their tent, everything's going to get stolen. You have to come to them with the right resources that can get them off the streets immediately. And that's how we're going to end this crisis. And to be honest, I don't think everybody wants to end this crisis because it's not profitable to do so. I will oftentimes be critical of progressive type cities because progressive politics really just have a laissez-faire, lax sort of view on, drug use, homelessness, littering, bad behavior, petty crime, all that stuff. It's all the things that have kind of ruined our city. So not being political, but progressive type cities tend to have the worst homeless problems. If you really want to end this crisis, stop waiting on the government to solve it, because guess what? It's not going to happen. The government has proved it's not going to happen, right? Anybody can volunteer. Anybody can do neighborhood watch. Anybody can take a stand. And you know what? If you don't want to go out there, vote differently. Vote for the people that have said that are going to make a real change. Donate to the right programs. Donate to the people out there making a real difference. The ones that are exposing the truth, the ones that are actually have a proven model. That's how we're going to end this crisis. They need support.
I've come to Portland several times, and the last time I was here, I watched a man overdose on these very streets. And that's a direct result of Measure 110 that has allowed hard drugs to be openly used, that has enabled addiction, that has exacerbated the homeless crisis. It's absolutely heartbreaking to walk around the city streets here, once beautiful, to speak to the locals, to speak to business owners, and listen to them yearn for an old time where Portland was clean, it was flourishing, where they didn't have to fear for their lives, where they could raise their children. The city degrading right now is a direct result of the progressive policy that we continue to see. And as many more people continue to flee these blue areas and make their way to red states, we are starting to see cities like Austin, Texas, look more and more similar to the streets of Portland.